What is up, YouTube? We are here today with day 21 of JavaScript with Joe. I realize it's very dark in here. How's that? Right, so only 5 days left. We're in the end game now. Wow, yeah, it feels crazy. I can't believe I've been doing this for 7 months now. Every Wednesday, bar some holiday exceptions. And we'll be doing so for the next few Wednesdays as well. So if this is your first time, I'll go through how this normally works quite quickly. I'll send some links. I have been selling loads of my stuff. I'm moving countries, so you might see more chats and other sort of admin windows that you wouldn't normally see. But there is the link to where the code will be, and here is the link to where the challenge details are if you want to copy that. So this is a website called Advent of Code. Every year they do sort of 25 holiday-themed competitions, code challenges that sort of match the style of a sort of a big tech interview. They tend to be, very focused on algorithms, but sometimes you can get away with not knowing much. You can get 2 stars for each one, so there's sort of 2 parts of the challenge, but I only give myself an hour and just see how far I can get. So if you were also giving yourself an hour and you're of similar skill level to me, this is what yours might look like. You can see there's a bunch of really hard ones that have been thrown in there. And in the last 11 days, I've only managed to get 1 star. So it did seem a lot easier at the start, but I've never noticed them to actually get harder over the course of the month before. We're on day 21 now. If you want to see the other 20, they're all on the YouTube channel if you're watching this YouTube channel now. And the code is also all available in the description, but I've also linked it in the chat now. It's here on this website called Repple. .it. This is a website where if you don't know how to write JavaScript, Python, whatever language you want to know, they just give you a nice little file browser, a nice little code editor, and a terminal. So you don't need to install any of that stuff. It can be quite hard to get started programming if you don't know what any of these things are. So over here, there's a file browser with a text file where you can input stuff. And I've left a little snippet in the code that can read those things in. So if I press play, and access that input variable, we've got that number that I just typed here. So just because almost all of these require reading from a file, I thought I'd give you that for free. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have what's called a Repl, R-E-P-L, and that stands for read, evaluate, print, loop. And what that means is that for every line in here, it'll try and read what we type in. So if I type 2 + 3, it'll try and read that 2 + 3, try and figure out what that means by evaluating it, and then on the next line it'll print it out if there is any output. So for 2 + 3, there's an implied output of the sum of that mathematical function. And then at the end loop, it just starts again, so we can keep asking it stuff forever. And this is kind of how some programming languages work. They sort of read through each thing line by line and evaluate what it means, try and figure out where the lines terminate, and try and figure out what we're actually asking it to do, basically. So that's our bread and butter of coding. As I said, we won't take more than an hour, so I'll probably wrap this up around 4:55, so that's in about 50 minutes, and we'll see how far we get. Do feel free to send me messages in the chat if you think I'm going too quick, too slow, if you want to let me know how long you've been writing JavaScript, if you've ever written JavaScript before, and I'll try and sort of speed up or slow down to match whoever is viewing it live. Thank you very much for doing so. But as I said, I'm on 1 monitor, so I might miss the chat for a while. I'll try and remember to check it, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's get started. So day 21, Dirac Dice. There's not much to do as you slowly descend to the bottom of the ocean. The submarine computer challenges you to a nice game of Dirac Dice. This game consists of a single die, 2 pawns, and a game board with a circular track containing 10 spaces marked 1 through 10. Each player's starting space is chosen randomly, which is my puzzle input. So very easy puzzle input there, 2 starting spaces. So this is why we've got this text file here, so I can just read those into this input, and I've got those 2 values. We'll have to do a bit of processing to break that down into the players we actually need, but that's not a problem for now, and I'm going to use this example one. So this test input will be unique, might not be unique, but this will be my test input. So if you wanted to try and submit these yourself, you'll end up with different numbers. So to start with, they normally give us an example that's actually played through, and that's what this is. so I can basically make sure I am writing the correct thing before testing it on the actual test case. Right, so player 1 goes first. Players take turns moving. On each player's turn, the player rolls the dice 3 times and adds up the result. Then the player moves their pawn that many times forward around the track. That is, moving clockwise on spaces in order of increasing value, wrapping it back around to 1 after 10. So if a player is on space 7 and they roll 2, 2, and 1, they would move forward 5 times to spaces 8, 9, 10, and 1. Oh yeah, okay. And stopping on 2. After each player moves, they increase their score by the value of the space that their pawn stopped on. Players' scores start at 0, so if the first player starts on space 7 and rolls 5, they would stop on 2, add 2 to their score. The game immediately ends as a win for any player whose score reaches at least 1000. Since the first game is a practice game, the submarine opens a compartment labeled deterministic dice, and a 100-sided dice falls out. This dice always rolls 1 first, then 2, then 3, and so on up to 100, after which it starts over again at 1. Play using this dice. Wow. For example, given these starting positions, player 1 starts at 4, player 2 starts at 8, player 1 will roll 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 100, and take those scores, and eventually player 1 should win, looks like before the first dice even ends, perhaps. But we'll see. Since player 1 has at least 1,000 points, player 1 wins and the game ends. At this point, the losing player had 745 points, and the dice have been rolled 993 times. Play a practice game using the deterministic 100-sided dice. The moment either player wins, what do you get if you multiply the score of the losing player by the number of times the dice was rolled during the game? Okay, this actually looks like one that I might be able to finish in the next hour, so let's see how that's going. Nothing in the chat, that's fine. Right, so we've got the inputs. In fact, it's so simple to read that input in. I don't actually even need to bother with file reading in at all, right? Because I can just store those two things in variables. So to start with, first thing I've done there is comment this out. So I can do that by pressing Control and / or Command / if I'm on a Mac. And what this means is you could write something that's not valid JavaScript, and that would cause problems in JavaScript. But we have this function of writing comments. So this basically is to let us write plain English in our code to give us little handy tips. You know, this variable is my grandmother's name, something like that, right? In case your variable names aren't good enough. But it can be a useful way to keep your code readable if it starts to get too complicated. But for now, I've just used it to sort of save this for later without needing to undo or copy or paste anything. I'm going to store a variable. So variables can be stored with the keyword var for variable, a variable name equals, which is called the assignment operator. So you could think of this as sort of like an arrow instead. It's storing some value, say 1,000, in our variable called variable name. And that is sadly just a pattern that you have to learn, but you'll use this so much while coding that it won't be something you have to worry about for long. So var, variable name, and a value. That's pretty useless for now. I'm going to call it player 1 start position. And we can see that should be 4. And then player 1 start position, let's do player 2 start position, that's going to be 8. So what we've done here is defined a variable. There are actually alternative ways of defining a variable as well. We have var, let, and const. So var is the sort of older way of defining variables, but in newer JavaScript code, you would write let and const. So let basically takes the place of var. It does have some other functionality, but I won't go into it now. Exactly the same, we could write something like this, and that's totally valid. We can overwrite it. The difference with const is that we can't overwrite that variable. So if I do this and say player 2 start position equals 9, then player 2 start position, player 2 start position still equals 9, but it can be changed is the point I'm making. So now it equals 10. Player 1 start position, on the other hand, is equal to 4. If I try and change that, I'll get an error because I've told it I don't want that to change. So const isn't really the right choice here. Var or let would be. Oops. So I'll just change them both to let. Put them back in the right order. And actually, this could be more useful than just the start position, right? The start position is sort of implied by it being assigned. So we could just do player 1 position like that. Those look good, and we can just treat those like any other number. So if I want, I could do player 1 position plus player 1 position. I get 8. I can multiply them, I can take them away, I can store them as another variable, I can do all sorts of stuff there. We've got a track, so I need to use some sort of data structure to keep a notion of how the track looks, or I can just use the start position and sort of add numbers to it as well. Not really sure what I'll do there. Like what I'd like to do is have a variable like this, and that's basically our board, and we can navigate over that board. My worry is that we're going to have to access these through indexes. So I'm going to be introducing, if I was at position 4, that's actually the 0th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd element of the array. So we're going to be off by 1 all the time, and that's rife with confusion potentially. But let's keep it. So const board, the board itself is never going to change, but our position on it will. And this is what's called a list or an array. It changes from language to language. I think in JavaScript it might even be an object itself. So if I do board 0, it will get the 0th index of that list. So that is the first item in the list. We just count from 0 in computer science, sadly. So the first index of that list is actually the second one because we've missed that 0. So that's something to get our head around. That might make this a bit more confusing, but we'll see how it goes anyway. So there's our board. What is the first thing we need to do? We need to use our deterministic dice as well. So we can say let next dice roll equal 1. Then we can do something like roll dice. So we can write a little function. We've not had a function yet, but let's write a function. So that goes like this: structure const function name, then parameter names. So as many parameters as we want to pass here. Whatever we want to call them, they're just variables. Oops, that's not right. That has an equals, then an arrow. This is again the sort of the newer way of writing functions. And then in here we can return whatever we want to return. So I'll just return number 1, 2, 3 and press play just so I can show you how we can call this function. So it doesn't matter what I pass it, we'll always get that 1, 2, 3 back. So that's a good, again, probably the only other pattern you really need to just know off by heart is how to write a function, how to write a variable, and then from there you can build up to almost anything. So that doesn't really make sense. Let's call this roll dice. That's going to take the next dice roll. It's probably going to increment this. So we're going to say next dice roll plus equal to 1. It is a bit more complicated than that, obviously, because eventually we'll get up to over 100. So I'm going to leave a comment to myself to fix that later, to do if 100 reset to 1. Then we just want to return next dice roll. Is that what I want to do? I feel like that should be backwards because I want to roll the dice and increment it after that. Which means I should do this. And it's also a bit more complicated because I'm not just rolling the dice once. This is going to be my function to roll the dice once. So maybe I'll do this plus 1. No. Let's do... When does it actually reset? At 100? Right, so we're going to do if, our first if statement. So if next dice roll equals 100, then I'm going to return 1, else return next dice roll +1. So I should be able to just call that on my dice roll now. Oops. Roll dice. Next dice roll. So there we go. So really it should be giving me 1. That doesn't really make sense. Maybe I should be doing like get next dice roll. Next dice roll, and then using that to sort of reset this. So get next dice roll, next dice roll. Oops. Next dice roll should get 2, and the next dice roll should just get 1. Unless I overwrite it. Cool. Then I'm going to have to do roll 3 dice. So roll 3 dice equals, and again that's going to take the next dice roll, and it's going to return let's do let roll 1 equal next dice roll, let roll 2 equal next dice roll, get next dice roll. Oh. I sort of need to update the actual dice roll as well, so I need to do like I need to do next dice roll equals get next dice roll next dice roll. Why is it so hard already? Right, and then that can just match this pattern. Roll 2, get next dice roll, and then roll 3. I don't know if I need this as a global variable outside it as well, but I guess we'll know when I add these rolls up. So if I call roll 3 dice on next dice roll, I get 6, 1, 2, 3, 6. If I call it again, I'll probably get 6 again. So that's not right. So I do actually need to update this. So maybe instead of doing that, I should do this and it'll update my global variable. Roll 3 dice, next dice roll, 6, 15, 24, 33. And that should be what we're getting here. Oh no, it's the space we land on there. Oh, we'll just have to check that. So 4, 5, 6, 9, 15, 15, 24. That looks like it's adding up correctly, though we also next need to figure out our landing position. So const get points needs to update our position. So that's going to take our current position and it's going to update our actual position. It also needs a roll, which will be the number that our roll 3 dice is giving us. And it's going to do, so if I was on 1, I guess maybe some test cases would be good here. So we can do get points and do console.log. So this is a little function we can use to output something. Oh, hello, John. I didn't see your messages before. Me here. Help me, please, to solve my problem. We can talk in Google Meet. Apologies, I'm doing this challenge right now. You're welcome to put it in the comments or something, and I might be able to help. But I'll spend the next hour doing this. Console.log get points. Current position is, let's say 1, and let's say our roll is 5. That should give me 6, right? Doesn't do anything because get points doesn't do anything. Return current position plus roll. Easy enough for now. So that should give us 6, which it does. So it should be 6. So let's do something a bit harder. Let's say 10. So if it's 10, it should go all the way around once, I think. Is there an example of this? Here we go, we can use this. So player 2 is at 8, and it says 8 plus 15 should be 3. So let's base it off that instead. So let's say 8 plus 15 should be 3, which obviously isn't going to be what we've done because we've just added them together. We're getting 23, which kind of gives us our clue. Maybe we just need to get rid of all the 10s there. So we can take away 20 because we know it's looped twice. But there is actually something in JavaScript called the Modulo Operator, which is built exactly for stuff like this. It's called the remainder in JavaScript. I'll paste it in the chat. But what we can do is just in here, we can do that modulo 10, and it will get us the remainder from division with 10. I might need to put all of these in brackets as well, but let's see. Yeah, so that's just done it on the roll. I want to do it on everything. And there we go, we got 3. So that is our get points done. Next, we just need to do it until somebody's score is 1,000. So we're not keeping track of score. We're not even keeping track of whose turn it is. So let's say const player turn equals 1, 2. So we can iterate through this array back and forth. And we want const player scores equals, and let's say they start with 0, 0. And again, we can iterate through these two with the same iterator, I suppose. So let's do a while player scores dot any. How do I use an any function? Is it any? Is it sum in JavaScript? Test if one element in the array passes the test. So I can do if any is less than, not any, sorry, sum, score is score greater than or equal to 10, then we stop doing the while loop. This one needs to be in brackets. Oops. And then in here we do, this will just go forever. Return. And for now, I'm just going to increment one of the scores. So I'll do player scores 0 equals player scores 0 plus 1. So that will increment this 0 until we get to 10, hopefully. And then it should end. And I'll just log the player scores as well so we can see that counting up. Oh, I have to call, no, that should be okay. While player scores sum score is greater than or equal to 10, which shouldn't be true. So why isn't it logging anything? I'm guessing perhaps sum doesn't work as I thought it was. Array.sum needs to be a condition, which it is. Well, I could flip this and see if I've just got my logic wrong. Well, that made it run, but it didn't end. So why did this not work? Because there isn't one. Oh, I need the opposite of this, perhaps. While not player scores sum is greater than 10. There we go. So it ends on 10. Well, it ends one before 10. So let's do. It should run one more turn if that while loop ends. But that's okay for now, we can change that later. Okay, so running a turn is working now, but we're not actually calculating the correct points. So at the end of each one, let's change player turn. Turn equals player turn plus 1. Again, use that modulo. Oh no, it'll go to 0. Do player turn equals player turn modulo 1. And then I'll log out player turn. So it should flip between two things, hopefully. No, because it's constant. Change that to a let. Player turn plus 1 modulo 2, perhaps. Again, that means brackets. I could also do, what's that doing? Player turn is 1 equals, it should be players. Player turn plus 1. Now it's always 1. Hopefully because this was wrong. Nope, always 1. So let's see, player turn is 1, players, player turn is 1 plus 1 is 2, modulo 0 will be 1 again, so it'll just do that forever. So what do I want this to be? This should toggle between 0 and 1 forever, basically. If I do players 0, 1, no. So if it's 1, which it currently is, I want this to be 1. So I should just be putting player turn, and that will swap it onto the next one, and probably break or something. So there we go, it goes 1, 2, then when it goes up to 3, it needs to go back down to 1. So that needs to be modulo 3, but that would go back down to 0, not 1. Does that work? I doubt it. Go 1, 2, then it's undefined. So player turn is 2. I'm not incrementing it. Plus 1 in brackets. Now it goes 1, player turn 1 plus 1, modulo 3, which should be 2. Players 2 doesn't exist, so it should be players 1, which is what I had. Why am I putting modulo in? 1, 2. But there should never be a 2. So it should be modulo 1. But that's always going to be 1. What do I need to do here? It needs to go from, if it's 1, I need to go to 0. You know what? This should just be perhaps a Boolean. So let's say is let is player 1 turn equal true. And then in here I can say is player 1 turn equals not is player 1 turn. And then I just need to do in here if is player 1 turn, then I'm going to increment player 1's scores, else increment player 2's scores, which will be fine as long as there's never more than 2 players, which I'm imagining the second half of this challenge will be. So now that should cover me. Nope. Player turn is always 1, but I'm not using player turn anymore. I'm using is player 1 turn, which means I don't need this. It should alternate to true and false. I'm seeing the scores go up, so it's 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. That looks good, and it's ending when the first one hits a 10, which means we do need to run like 1 extra turn of this at the end, but that should be okay. Now, instead of just adding the scores, we need to do get points. So that needs to be player scores 0 plus get points, the current position player 1 is at, which I'm not updating at all, and the roll, which is, where do I get the roll? Get points. Roll 3 dice. Does that return a number? Yeah. Then same for these guys. Oof, okay. Running a turn. So we seem to be getting 0 there each time. 2 zeros and then a 9. We are doing some other calculations though, which might be messing it up. Nope. Get points. Should be taking their current position, which it does, though they shouldn't both be player 1 position. Player 2 position. Okay. Still definitely wrong, right? Because we should be seeing this go from, well, actually their starting position makes a difference, right? So if we're starting at 4, we should see 4 roll 1, 2, 3, which should take them to 10, so they should have 10 points immediately. Yeah, so I've gone a bit wrong with my 10 calculation. I'm guessing it's becoming 0 when it shouldn't be, which is this bit. Should that be 11? And then maybe minus 10 here, minus 1 here. 11 minus 1 here to account for the index, perhaps. No, because then it should be ending immediately. I think this is our problem here, this 10. Let's add some more logs so we can just see what's happening. So what are we calling? Roll 3 dice. Let's also log the current position. So console.log player 1 position, player 1 position is 4, still 4, that's fine. Player 2 position, player 2 position. Okay, still 8. We also need to do update position, and to do update position, right, I know that's wrong because that should be, it should be 10 immediately. So let's bump this number up to 20 anyway, just so it's not immediately over. Right, the next bit is that first turn is just wrong because of the modulo. So the score, oh, the position should be updated like this, but they should be on 10. So the issue here is my board is not, how many? 1, 2, 3, oh, it is 10 units, but the modulo is going to make it one less than it should be. And if I do modulo 11, the problem is modulo is going to take me back to 0. So I'd be adding a 0 in if for whatever reason I get 11. So what's happening now is I'm doing 4 plus 6, which is 10. That modulo 10 is 0. And 0 isn't even in there. So I'm hoping I could just add a number to the output of that and I'd be fine. So if I just do this, does that cover me? No. So the current points there should be 10. And it's doing 4 plus 6 modulo 10, which is 0, plus 1 should be giving me plus 1. So that's not right. So roll 3 dice is where it's going wrong. And I'm calling get points. No. Get points on the roll 3 dice. I think that's fine, but let's just double check. I mean, it's not fine, but something is clearly wrong. But let's see what we're getting. So we are getting 6. So on that first one, we're getting 4, 6. It looks like the turn is being calculated before I do anything else. Is that correct? Where is this log coming from? The scores are being logged at the top of the turn rather than the end of the turn. Well, that's better. Okay. So now have I got everything wrong? Because it is now saying 1, 0, when it should be saying 10, 0, right? So do I need to do this minus 1 instead? No, that's off too. 4 plus 6. 4 plus 6. Let's get rid of the modulo. See if we're getting it right. Because I think that's right without that. So the first 2 rolls, 10 is correct. But the second roll is 15. That should be moving them from 8 plus 15 to 23. But they should be on 3. So what I did before is probably correct, minus the fact that it doesn't work if we're exactly a multiple of 10. So yeah, instead of a 0, it should be a 10. How can I do that? Again, this is what I talked about at the start. The 0 indexing is kind of trouble. I could do let points equals this modulo 10, and then do if points equals 0, then points equals 10. Otherwise, points equals points. I'm sure there's absolutely a better way of doing that, but I can't think of it right now. So I think that should cover me. So we go 4 plus 6 is 10, 8 plus 15 is 13, which should be 3. Oh, this isn't going to work for all, it has to work for all multiples of 10. And how has that even happened? 8 plus 15 is 23. Why has it just taken 10 off? Because I've just done it on the roll. It's be like that. So there we go, we've got 10. 8 plus 15 is 3. 4 plus 24 is 8, which is 10 plus 8. 8 plus 33 is 1. Okay, so that looks good. What have I messed up here? The scores are the scores going up like they should? 10, 3, 14, 9 we should be seeing. 10, 3, 18. Their starting positions are always the same, but they should be updated. So it should be player 1 position is equal to its new player score. And same to the other one, player 2 position should be equal to player 2's score. So now we should have 10, 3, 14, 9. 10, 3, 14, 9. Looks good. And then we're going to do that up to 1,000 points now. So it should come out quite quickly. And remember also we have one less iteration than we should do. Oh, that might be because I was logging the scores at the top instead of after they were calculated. So the final turn should be moving to space 10 with all this. No, my positions are wrong. I need to do the same thing. How did that? Oh. Oh no. This isn't going to work anyway, is it? Current position plus a roll, because the rolls will be huge. This is only going to help if they're actually 10, not if they divide 10. So I need to do modulo 10. No. If points is 0, no, that should be fine. If points is 0, then points is 10. Return points. Then this update also needs that same logic. I'm just thinking, can I just use my getPoints function here and just give it 0 for the roll? Which isn't a great name for the function, but it does let me reuse that weird hack I wrote for the positions. So it ends on a move from position 4. And there you go. So it's on space 4, and it's going to move 10 to get there. So I should be able to see 990 here. Player 1, position 10. How did you get to 994? There seems to be a sort of an intermittent move here that shouldn't be happening. So what's going on? So on 990, run a turn, we roll 10. It should be going up to 1000 here, but it doesn't. In fact, there's loads of turns. So weird that it ends up on the right number. 742, 745. Yeah, the other one is way off. So something's wrong there. Have I... The positions are looking good. Maybe let's go back to the early ones again, just so it's a bit more easy to diagnose. How did I run that? There we go. Right, so we've got the first turn. Player 1 to space 10, moving 6. Second turn from 8 to 3. Third turn from 10 to 4. And its position is 4 in the next one. what's happening with the 3? The other guy 3. Player 2 position 9. Player 2 shouldn't be at 9 for sure. Look at this. The score is 9, but the space is 6. Is that where I've messed up here? How did I get there? 42. 15, 24, 42, this is 21, 33, that's 42, player 1 rolls 42, from position 4, so it should go to 6. It should go to position 6, but the score is 2. But the next time we see players 1's position, it's in 10. So that calculation is coming from their current score, not their score. Yeah. It's using this. It's using their score when it should be using their most recent score. Or like their most recent roll, which makes sense because I'm using get points when I should be using... I need this, but I've rolled it there, so I need to store that as a variable. So let p1 points equal this. Then I can use p1 points here, and I can use it here. But I think this will cover me, hopefully. Oops. And there's an extra plus here, I don't know where that's come from. Player 2 points, plus player 2 points, and 2 position is player 2 points. Is that right? So have I just done it all again? Oh yeah, no, that looks okay. I want to go up to 1,000 now. 1,745, that looks good. And we got 1,745. We can calculate the end. What do we get if we multiply the score of the losing player by the number of times the dice was rolled during the game? So we've not kept a count of dice rolls. So let's do that. Oh, and the dice rolls is the number of... Ooh, okay. So let's do let no of dice rolls equals 0. And then in here I can say no dice rolls plus equal 1. And then at the end I should just have to log this out. And I think I can just get the rest from visually inspecting the code. So I've got now... I'm just going to go get some water while that runs. Oh, it's not running. Hello people in the chat. I'm teaching some JavaScript. You should be able to rewind the video if you're watching now and don't know what's going on, or you can check on the sidebar of the channel. There's like 20 other videos of me going through this all, and then come back next Wednesday. You can see it live if you have any more specific questions. Just going to refresh this page. Looks like we might get 1 star if it's working. Whew. Okay. So we think number of dice rolls is 993, and 745 is the other number. Seven, 4, 5, 993, that looks good. So I just need to multiply those two numbers. So now we can try it with our puzzle input, which is 6 and 3. We didn't use any file reading So we can just change it here. 6 and 3 up to 1000. And then I can use my Repl. So 1005 times 749, 752, 743, 752, 745 even. And I should be able to submit that. Too low. Ooh, okay. So our number there is too low. How can that be? So either 749 is wrong, or the number of dice rolls is wrong. I don't know. I must have missed something off just a little bit. To 100. Did I reset the dice if it was over 100? That's the difference now, right? Is that we have actually... Have we? I should have made some rolls that are bigger, and it's clipped over. So I'm hoping that this is where we're wrong. So if the current dice roll is 100, reset it. How does that say? So on up to 100, after which it starts over at 1 again. 100-sided dice rolls 1. So it should be doing it on 100, which is fine. It should be going back to 1, which I think is fine. Yeah. If next dice roll is equal to 100, what would be really useful is just to see what happens around here. So I'm going to log every next dice roll, console.log next dice roll, and just see if we're getting an extra 100 when we shouldn't. That looks good. That looks good. That's really annoying. Player 1 wins and the game ends. The losing player has a certain number of points. My puzzle input is 6 and 3, and I did use 6 and 3. Why is that number changed? Why is that number changed? What did I even do? I did do that right, didn't I? 749 times 1005, 752745. It's the lower number's score. They got 6 there. 6 plus 12 is 7. They added 7. We rolled the dice 1005 times. Score of the losing player by the number of times the dice was rolled during the game. Have I rolled 3 times more than I needed to, perhaps? It doesn't look like it. Maybe at the end of each roll 3 I'll just log out the number of dice rolls as well, just to see if there's an extra one coming through. Oh, how annoying. I imagine somewhere we're just off by 1 or 2 things. If the player is greater than or equal to 1000, but I think because it's 1005 it'll play the same. else have we got? Modulos. I guess something in this feels kind of sketchy. We could have lost it there. Or it's just 100 ticking over, but I can see the 100 ticking over. 97, 98, 99, 100. I guess all I could think is that that's wrong, but it says 100-sided dice. So on up to 100, but I think that means up to and including, obviously, because there's 100 numbers from 1 to 100 inclusive. So I don't know. I think we'll leave it there though. If anyone in the chat can see what's wrong, feel free to let me know. Obviously the code is shared in the chat there if anyone has any ideas. But I think I'll leave it there. I imagine it probably got lost a little bit in the translation between, you know, the indexes and the actual numbers on the board. But I felt like it was going pretty well. I feel like I'm probably just one of these numbers, plus or minus 3 things, and I'll be all right. But I'll leave it there. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and bye-bye. Going to be right back now. I'll stick the chat open for a little bit.